Bienvenidos de nuevo a Oportunidades en Grecia, el podcast en el que tratamos de acercar las oportunidades que en el marco de la internacionalización, de la exportación, la inversión y la captación de financiación, el país presenta para las empresas españolas. Welcome again to Oportunidades en Grecia, the podcast where we try to get business opportunities regarding exports and investments in the country, Greece, closer to Spanish companies. Today, in this our 22nd episode, already 22, we will talk about project finance and more specifically about PPPs, about 3Ps. And we have a wonderful person invited here to the program today, to the episode, Nikos Sergis. Nikos, how are you? Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Jorge. I'm fine. With a lot of things to do back in the office, but we're really fine, both as a PPP unit and, of course, for the Ministry of Economy and Finance. So thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity you are giving us to discuss what we are doing right now in the PPP sector in Greece, and, of course, in general, to discuss any other, let's say, details about this type of projects.
We will make it worth it. Nikos is, as he said, head of the PPP unit at the Ministry of Economy and Finance from 2022 here in Greece. I would say it's almost quite of a love story with PPPs because you've been working on this for more than a decade within the same environment. Previously, you were head of unit. Let me introduce the topic a little bit for those that are listening. I think there is a long story in Greece when it comes to PPPs, a story that I think we share Greece and Spain in different ways. I was personally involved in PPPs as advisor of the Minister of Transport Infrastructure for a couple of years. There I was doing finance, international activity, and PPPs were part of the job, mainly in roads and railroads. And I can tell that we have all started, I would say, with the same kind of projects. Mostly did transport infrastructures back in the 90s, 2000s, and so on, and then moved on to all the sectors. We have also shared part of the learning curve, I would say, because some Spanish companies have actually been present in the market here in Greece, doing some operations with the traditional DBFO approach, design, build, finance, operate approach. But as mentioned, no one better than Nico to tell us about this sort of activity. So without any further ado, let's just dive into the Q&A, into the questions and answers. First of all, I would like to ask you, Nico, about, I mentioned it briefly, about the history of PPPs in the country, in Greece. What could you tell us about the evolution?
You know, I think it's a mere fact that the Greek PPP sector has a very, I would say, solid and very successful history over the last 20 years. 20 years is the PPP life in Greece as the ratification of the PPP law, the 3389, came back in 2005. So I think that it's a really successful tool that has many advantages, and we will discuss it further later. Going from the past to the future, I would say that in 2004, 2005, the Greek government at that period of time wanted to find some alternative solutions in order to solve one of, let's say, the major problems in the public sector. This problem was I think that the problematic maintenance that we had in our public infrastructure. So we didn't have a proper maintenance program for all of our public infrastructure in Greece. And, the Greek government at that period of time had started to find alternative ways in order to implement projects, mainly as regards the social infrastructure, so schools, student accommodation, or some other type of project that does not have the element of the commercial exploitation. So we did have some concessions, the bridge in Rio de Janeiro and other motorways here in Athens, but at that contracts, it was included the maintenance program, so we didn't have any problem. So the government started to think ways and to think options about solving the maintenance of the public infrastructure. And that came the PPP. So in 2004, we had the ratification of our law, of the PPP law. So it all started at 2005. And after that, we had, let's say, like a roller coaster. So at the very beginning, we had, let's say, a skepticism from the public and the public bodies, because it was a huge, let's say, change, because we had to convince the public bodies that they need to move from a, let's say, construction mentality to a service mentality. And this was not so easy, to be honest, because all the public bodies and all the public servants knew very well how to design and construct a project, but not at all to maintain this project at a proper way. So this was our role as a PPP unit, in order to let them know what is this tool and what is the advantages of this tool. And going to the present and to the future, I think that all this has been reverted, and every single public authority right now thinks that PPPs, I would say, it's one of the first choices in order to implement their project and the project that they have under their responsibility to be run as a PPP, and of course alongside with the unit, with the PPP unit, in order to cooperate and assist them in order to make a very well-defined infrastructure and project in general. So I think it's a really interesting story, going from the very beginning of the life in Greece, for the PPP life in Greece, till now that we have a huge, let's say, investment plan and for the present and for the future.
I think we will go through all of those, through the plan, through whatever is happening now, 2023, 2024, and then for the future, which is what actually will have great interest for our audience, the Spanish companies. You mentioned at some point the framework law, which is the law 3389 from 2005, and there I think you can find the key characteristics of the framework where whoever wants to jump into a PPP has to bear in mind. There are a few things that I would like you to elaborate a little bit more, but which are, well, basically the fast-track provision for grants, authorizations, and grants and authorizations, and also the way you can do the dispute resolution through arbitration. Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate a little bit more about what the framework law brought to the country?
You know, I think that setting up a new mechanism, a new tool, I think it's a very major and very key role in order to have a solid and transparent foundation in order to do all the next steps. So from the early beginning, we focused on having a very solid legal framework in order to step on that and then run all the next steps. So I feel, and I have as an experience for the last, let's say, 10, 11 years in the PPP unit, that the Greek PPP law has very, very, very important advantages. And something that I have to comment is that, you know, I feel that if you don't amend a PPP law for many years, I think that something is working. So from the early beginning of the ratification of the law till now, the only, let's say, amendment that we have done is only in order to include another provision that has to do with the fast license of the project. All the others are exactly the same from that we had ratified in 2004. And I totally believe that this law is very mature, it's very helpful for all the public bodies and also the Greek government in order to have a centralized, let's say, control by the ministry. Now, as regards the key characteristics, I think that we have many in our law, but let's say discuss about the major ones. The first one, and I think one of the most important, is that there is a centralized control and approval process by a governmental body that is the PPP unit, and of course the interministerial committee that takes all the necessary approvals and decisions. So every single public authority that wants or needs to implement a PPP project, they have to submit a proposal to us, to the unit, in order to check, evaluate, and of course discuss about some specific elements of the project. So if we have the proposal and we evaluate and see that all the lights are green, let's say both for legal, technical, and financial elements, then we submit this proposal and of course with our documentation to the interministerial committee, and we have the final, let's say, decision, the final approvals in order to be included as a project to the PPP law. So this centralized, let's say, process is really important, not only for us that we want to have, let's say, a control of all this pipeline, but also for the public authorities, because they feel safer to have another governmental body that will help them in order to submit something mature, something correct. So this was for both sides I
think it's very important to mention that PPPs demand a certain or a big degree of specialization. It's not something that just comes out of the blue, and that you need to know a lot of it to be able to regulate and to welcome investors.
Maybe that's because, as we said before, the public sector had a huge experience on design and build, and they didn't have the experience on let's say, projecting costs, for example, for the next 20-25 years that the PPP contract has. So this was really essential and really vital to have a body in a ministry that will assist all the public bodies in order to have something in a proper way. We have some other characteristics, such as that all of our tender procedures are totally in line with the European and domestic directives, so we follow a specific, let's say, legislation. We have in our law specific provisions that includes the minimal contractual provisions and, of course, a minimum content of a PPP contract. The other thing that is very important that you said it before, we have already included some provisions that refers to fast license provisions, and this is the amendment that we have done in 2019 in order to, let's say, include in our law that all PPPs can be included in the strategic, let's say, sector of the investment. So we can have some advantages in the fast licenses of some specific permits that each investor will take. So this was really vital because, some of our projects are not in a specific land, so maybe it's a domestic, let's say, level. So we have, let's say, 7 fire stations across Greece. So think that we have to take some licensing in a specific departments in other cities. So having a centralized licensing procedure really worked very well. As you may know, we have provisions in our law that we can implement alongside the public bodies, both concession type project and, of course, availability based project. So we have this type of project that we can implement. There is a contract that not only includes as we said before, the design and build, but also the facility management or the operation. So we have a contract that is responsible for all the PPP life. We have, and this is really crucial for the contractual, let's say, period, we have provisions that has specific elements and articles that has to do with the dispute resolution procedure. So every single public authority and, of course, the investors knows exactly what they have to do when, let's say, a problem may arise during the construction or during the operation period. So there is specific elements that are already known from the early beginning from our PPP law that each party will have to follow in order to solve maybe a dispute that will arise during the contract. And finally, but I think it's not least, we have this this overall control by the PPP unit for all the steps that each PPP contract has is really vital, because we are not involved only during the approval of the project, but we follow and we assist the public bodies both during the tender process and, of course, during the contractual life. So we participate in the tender committee with one member from our staff, from our personnel in the unit, and, of course, everything has to be approved by the PPP unit before, let's say, publishing the tender documents or signing the contract. So all these characteristics, I think that they have done this tool a very successful mechanism in order to implement new and very well-structured project in Greece so far.
This is really interesting and very important, because guarantees are basic for those that go for these sorts of projects. I have read somewhere that the way you have been funding the PPPs, the SPVs, has been quite innovative. I think you've done a lot of work through blending. So it's not the traditional private-public sector, but you bring along also international financial institutions and so on and so forth. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Thank you.
We have faced a lot, to be honest, over the last 10, 15 years. Of course, you know that Greece faced a huge economic crisis over the last 15 years. So we had to think outside of the box in order to finalize some contracts that we were in a very mature tender process. So what was the main problem on that? That we had already announced preferred bidder in some of our projects, and then the huge economic crisis arose. So we didn't have the banks at that period of time. So we had to think something in order to finalize all these necessary negotiations and reach a financial close. And what we did at that period of time, we tried to enable another financial institutions in the project. So we didn't have the commercial banks because the interest rate was really high, and I don't think that it was viable in order to sign this project. So we involved EIB, we involved another financial instruments from the European Union. Jessica was one instrument that was really crucial and closed really good gap that we had in the financing. So we tried to find ways in order to solve problems in that period of time. So the mix of European funds with private funds, we included in some of our projects, mainly the waste management sector. We tried to include EU funds in the construction period in order to lower the availability payment that will derives from the citizens in some regions. So
makes sense.
we did some type of innovative financing, and this is something that we have discussions with the European Commission and say that you are really innovative on that type of financing structure of your projects. So basically, because of the difficult periods that we faced, we tried to find innovative ways and have financial close in many of our projects. And we do it till now, as we have another, let's say, EU funding right now with RRF facilities.
I was about to ask you about that.
So right now we are doing exactly the same because we had this very successful history as regards the blending financial structure. And in many of our projects right now, especially in the irrigation sector, we have already included EU grants from the RRF that will, let's say, co-fund the project in the irrigation sector.
You mentioned, and I think very rightly, that it's hard to move from design and building to design and building, operating and maintaining. And I think that has to be portrayed clearly at the procurement phase of these projects. I know that the EBRD has been playing a major role and is also, of course, a guarantee for investors. Can you tell us a little bit more about the relationship?
Yeah. This is another very, very important element on PPPs because, as you may know, I think 1 month ago, the World Bank published a new report that shows that and classifies and ranks Greece as second worldwide as regards the best tender procedures in the PPPs. So this was something very crucial for us, not only to build a very innovative mechanism as regards the implementation of project, but only to have a transparent and very solid tool in order to be implemented by the public authorities. So the World Bank ranked us as second worldwide for the best practices as regards the tender procurement, and the main elements that took into account that for all the countries was, first of all, the transparency of the tender procedure. Secondly, the value for money for the projects. And thirdly, to have strong competition in all of your projects. So these three were the key elements of these evaluations, for all the countries. And Greece had, I think, the highest ranks in these three categories. So that's why we have a very high rank in this report. In parallel with that, I think that one other very crucial element for this classification is what we discussed before, this innovative financing, the blending structure between EU funds, private funds, the participation of European institutions, EIB or EBRD, and another financial instruments. All this, I think that they make it really important, and we had this outcome from World Bank. On the other side, what you mentioned is the BRD role, and I think it's really crucial for the PPPs in Greece. As you may know, from 2009 onwards, we had a very, let's say, huge growth of PPPs, of the PPP pipeline in Greece. So one of the major actions that we have to do is the appointment and the assign of some, let's say, advisors for on behalf of the public bodies. So we needed a much faster, let's say, mechanism in order to appoint consultants, and having a BRD with your side and setting let's say, framework agreement with the BRD in order to fasten all the necessary processes in order to have the consultants was something very vital, because as I said to you before, we had some projects that includes RRF grants. So RRF, you may know, that have very strict deadlines in order to finalize all the actions and all the procedures. So we didn't have the time to spend appointing consultants with all, let's say, the negatives that it may appear. So this was really crucial, and of course the standard of work of BRD, the deliverables and all the discussions that we have is really in a very, very high standard. So EBRD played a very important role in Greece for the PPP sector.
It is, I think it is. I wanted to mention it, I want to ask you, because I think it's a big guarantee for those that might eventually invest or try to follow PPP projects. It's a big guarantee, as I said, that EBRD, with its brand and the way it works for decades now, is participating in the process. Let's go now a little bit more into the PPP portfolio, the investment PPP portfolio. Could you give us a general view of data of importance, such as financial assumptions of IRR, leverage, tenor, but also project status, and maybe you could tell us a bit more about project type as of development costs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, right now Greece has one of the largest portfolio across Europe in PPPs. The whole portfolio right now counts more than 60 projects in total, including the signed ones and, of course, the projects that are right now under tender process. So 61, to be more accurate, 61 projects with a total development cost of around something less than 9 billion euros at that period of time. So the very important thing is that our project is not in a specific sector. So we have many sectors that right now we implement projects, going back from the school units, for the waste management units, some ICT project here in the electronic, the Attica Urban Transport Organization, that is the electronic fare collection system and the telematics. We have the motorways that are all of them are already signed, and of course we have others that right now we are, let's say, in the final step before signing the contract, that are the irrigation. So some project in this sector that includes not only the network, the irrigation network, but also some dams in some regions. We have other motorways. We have ICT projects, ultra-fast broadband network. So a very, very large, let's say, scale of project that now we implement. And one of the major things that we do we have under our responsibility in the PPP unit is to evaluate that all these projects is not only crucial for the public sector, but also attractive to the private sector. So from the early beginning, from the submission of the proposal by the public sector, by the public bodies, we check that all these costs that are both for the construction period and operation has a viable, let's say, financial model, to be honest. So the equity ARR is a range between 10 to 13%, 14%. So this is a benchmark of the attractive IRRs that we feel that we will have, let's say, a strong competition during the project life. The majority of our project right now, to discuss about the project status, as we said before, we have many that are already signed, so 23 projects right now that are signed, and next week we will have the 24. 23 with a total development cost of around 2.6 billion, and we have others that right now are under tender. There are 38, if I remember correctly, and 13 out of them are have already announced preferred bidders. So we have, let's say, many projects that are just a few steps before signing, and we have others that we have to do some other actions in order to mature the technical, mainly, elements, and then going to the last phase, that is the binding bids. Now, as regards the development cost as of the project, we have the huge majority of our project right now has to do with social infrastructure and reimbursement of the investor by availability payments. So the huge majority, the vast majority of our project right now, I think it's more than 85% right now, are availability-based project, and the other 15% is concession. The concession type is not something really different, running as a PPP or as a classical concession. The only difference is that the first steps includes, as we said before, the approval by a governmental body, that is a PPP, interministerial PPP committee, and of course the whole, let's say, monitoring and the whole evaluation, and of course assistance by the PPP unit in all the tender process, and of course the contractual period. So all these have set a very strong and very interesting pipeline for Greece right now, and I think that it's really attractive for the private sector as well.
Let me go a little bit farther when it comes to the sectors, those that you have contracted recently. And I know a little bit of this because I follow you and the team through LinkedIn, and I see permanently or very regularly new projects posted, it came to the contract point, etc. I see some of them in transport infrastructure, I see some of them in waste and water management, digital health, education, dorms, for instance. Are we missing something? I think you do a wide range of different sectors.
Yeah. As we said before, right now we have 23 contracts signed till now, with a total, let's say, contractual value of around 2.6 billion euros. Going again from the past to the future, in 2009 we had the signing of our first PPP project, was and still is, because in operational period, it's the implementation of seven fire stations across Greece. So then we had this huge economic crisis, and the next signing was in 2014. In 2014, we had 7 projects that were signed. So we had two school units here in Athens, the first, let's say, school building program as a PPP that we signed. And in parallel, we had the same year the signing of another 2 ICT projects that we told before, we discussed before, the electronic fare collection system in the Attica Urban Transportation Organization, and the telematics. And we had another 3 contracts that had to do with the implementation of 3 contracts that has to do with the ultra-fast broadband infrastructure. It was a concession type. So after the 7, we had the next type, the next year, we had the first signing in the waste management sector. So we had the signing of the unit in the waste management unit in Western Macedonia. And we had in 2015 the signing of a small project, but really crucial for the sector of justice, the recording of the court minutes in all of our courts here in Greece. After that, we had, as you said before, a very crucial sector, the road infrastructure. In 2022, we had the signing of the flyover motorway in Thessaloniki. It was the first motorway that was tendered as a PPP with availability payments and not with tolls. So flyover was signed in 2022, and in 2023 we had the signing of another 6 contracts. So another 2 motorways in the north and west Peloponnese, the Kalamata-Rizomylos-Pylos-Methoni motorway, and the northern axis of Crete, and the part between the Iraklio and Agios Nikolaos. It's the medium part of the whole motorway. And of course, right now we had a very crucial project, the first O&M, to be honest, project in Greece, the operation and maintenance of the metro in Thessaloniki, where next week we will have the start of the operation. So we are really happy that the first O&M project in Greece will start the operation and the maintenance through a PPP tool. And of course, we had a marina in its concession. We had last year the signing of a marina, and before that, we had another 4 waste management projects that we signed, and right now are in fully operational period with very good outcome as regards the environmental sector. The units in Epirus, the unit in Ceres, the unit in Ilia, in Peloponnese, and the unit in the whole region of Peloponnese. So we have this 22, and 2 weeks ago we had the final, let's say, signing of our portfolio, which was the implementation of 17 new school units in the region of Central Macedonia. That is really crucial because we feel that the added value of all these school units in Thessaloniki will be something very vital for the educational sector in Greece.
I think it's really interesting to hear that you're doing so many projects in so different sectors, because I think that proves the degree of maturity of PPPs in a place, in a country. You need some time to go from the traditional, although maybe bigger, transport infrastructure projects to other projects in different sectors, and also the degree of commitment to this way of approaching construction, but also operation and maintenance. Now let's go forward. So you've told us what happened between 1999, 2005, and now the projects that are ongoing or under contract in 2023, 2024. What's the pipeline looking forward? You know that the Spanish companies are very much keeping an eye in transport infrastructures traditionally, waste and water management.
Yeah, this is the key sectors that now we focus on, to be honest. As you may understand that we have done, I think, very crucial things so far, but there is a lot to do in the near future. So, as we discussed before, another 38 projects right now are under tender process, either in a mature, let's say, stage or in the very beginning. But I think that the crucial and the prevailing sectors right now are the waste sector, of course, the waste management sector, the water management sector, and the transport. And of course, some public administration buildings, such as the new governmental park, and of course, this is really crucial. But I think that we have to point out these 3 sectors because Spanish companies are really interested in. We have done some discussions in the near past. Firstly, the waste sector, we have some history, so we have some successful cases that we have already signed, and right now we have another 5, so 5 signed and another 5 that are under tender process. The first one is the waste management unit in the region of Central Macedonia, so a major part of Thessaloniki and other, let's say, regions and cities there. So in this project we announced the preferred bidder last month, so we have a preferred bidder, and right now we are in the final step, which is the finalization of the contractual documents, and then, of course, the approval by the Court of Audit, and then the signing. So we're just a few steps before signing this contract as well. And we have another 4 that are in the, let's say, in the competitive dialogue phase. So we have already pre-selected the bidders in the first phase, and right now we are in the middle of the process. The projects are in Attica. We have 2 main units in Attica, and we have another 2 which are in the, let's say, sensitive sector of our islands, because we have this geography that many islands have to deal with this type of problems. So we have, as a PPP, the waste management unit in Santorini, and another one in Rhodes, in the island of Rhodes. So all these right now are under the competitive dialogue phase. So we have we are doing the discussion with the market in order to mature the technical, mainly, elements of the project, and then going to the next phase, which is the binding bids. As regards the water sector, this is a sector that we entered in the past, let's say, 3 or 4 years. So mainly because the existence of EU funds from the RRF. So we had 6, now we have, but we will have 6 in the near future. We have 6 irrigation projects with the Tendering and Contracting Authority, the Ministry of Agriculture and Foods. 5 of them we have already finalized and we have closed the tender process. We have preferred bidders. So in 5 of them, we have already announced the final bidders. And in 1 of them, we didn't have any competition. So we are rescheduling and we are redrafting the project in order to get the approval by the Ministerial Committee and retender the project from the beginning. So it's in the action that right now we are doing in order to tender from the beginning. So 6 with this public authority, and we have another 3 with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport that has to do with not with irrigation purposes, but with potable water. So we have a dam and the network in Pharsala, in the Nipeas River. We have the Tavronitis project in Crete, which is a dam and the network. And we have the dam and the network in the island of Corfu. So all of these projects as well are in the competitive dialogue phase. So we have already pre-selected the bidders, and right now we have the discussions with the market in order to go to the next phase. And going to the last sector is the motorway, so the road infrastructure. We have already signed the 3 motorways in Thessaloniki, in Peloponnese, and in Crete, and we have another 2 that are in the same stage with the irrigation. We are in competitive dialogue phase. In Thessaloniki Evethesa is the first project, and the other one is in Drama Amphipoli, so 2 motorways in the northern Greece. That right now we are fixed and we are discussing about the final details of the technical aspect, the technical element in order to move to the next phase. And the last one it's not in the road infrastructure, but it's the rail infrastructure. It's all the necessary actions and necessary works that need to be done in order to rebuild the rail infrastructure in the northern Greece from Florina to Alexandroupoli. And right now we are in very detailed discussions with OSE, the relevant public body, in order to start the project from the beginning.
Well, there's plenty there as well, and quite in an advanced situation, I would say, right? You've been very efficient running those. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned before that you have Excel blending, and I wanted to ask you whether it could be something recommendable or something that might have an advantage to blend with Spanish funding, since we actually do provide with equity in some occasions for the SPV, or we can leverage the equity with senior debt from different funds. Do you think that could be a plus for Spanish companies, or is there maybe already a lot of funding within the financial system with the systemic banks and so on and so forth?
For sure. It is our pleasure, and we have seen in the near past some Spanish companies to participate in some of our projects. So, for example, the motorways, I think 2 out of 3, we had the participation of a Spanish company, both as an investor and as a constructor. So we have seen, I think it's Acciona that participated in this type of project. So we're really happy to see not only the domestic players, but also international players in all of our projects. So I think that, as we discussed, we have a huge pipeline, a huge portfolio that, of course, the Greek market may need to supplement some other players from abroad in order to meet all of our goals, that is the implementation of this project. So I feel that Spanish companies have a specific and very large experience on having this type of project, both for the road infrastructure sector or the water and waste management. So we are really happy to see these companies, Spanish companies with a huge experience in our project, and of course, both for as a constructor or as an investor, so to have the equity in this project. So I totally believe that there is enough space for other companies from abroad and from Spain in general in order to participate in our project, in our portfolio.
Well, that's been a lot of information and a lot of ideas. We got started with the history of PPPs in the country, from design and build, traditional public construction, to design, build, operate, and maintain. I think in some of the latest projects to have also operation and maintenance. We talked about the framework law, very important. You mentioned transparency. I think that's a clue. You mentioned leverage, creative leverage, Jessica, EIB, and so on and so forth. We talked about the role of EBRD in the procurement and the procurement unit, and I'm very glad to hear, because I didn't know that World Bank rated Greece a few weeks ago, as you said, a few weeks ago, as second best country by tender procedure, building on tender procedure, value for money, and real competition through the tenders. You mentioned 61 projects and 9 billion euros at this very moment. Availability is the main way you develop, and a very big pipeline. So potential opportunities for local players as much as for international players. Thanks a lot, Nico.
My pleasure, Jorge. Really nice to be here with you and discuss about PPPs in Greece.
Y nosotros nos vemos de nuevo pronto en Oportunidades en Grecia. Aún hay mucho por conocer. En nuestros próximos episodios hablaremos de nuevo de energía, en particular de renovables, del Banco Europeo de Reconstrucción y Desarrollo, de turismo. Hasta pronto.